What do we got on?
Peter,
Do we have,
Peter, Tony, Bill, Ron, Matt.
Mr.
I'm missing Matt.
Mr. Kimmler?
Tony Gunn.
You said Matt's not on?
Just Matt. I don't see him.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, let's go.
Nobody else is coming?
I don't think so,
They're all on.
unless they're going to show up shortly, but. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, January 11th at 6:30 PM in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom and also accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with Wisconsin statute sections 19.83 and 19.84 in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for discussion and action. Roll call shows all commissioners present except for Mr. Kimmler. Next item on the agenda is public input or public appearance on any items that are not subject to a public hearing. There are no public hearings on tonight's agenda. If there is anyone in the audience or with us via WebEx that would like to have an availability to speak during public input or public appearance, I welcome you to do so. All I would ask is that you state your name and your address for the record. Is there anyone within our audience or via WebEx that would like to speak? Okay, so Mr. Kimmler has joined us. Welcome, Matt.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. If there is no one for public input or public appearance, we can go on to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of minutes from the December 14th, 2020 Plan Commission meeting.
Move approval as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes from the December 14th meeting?
This is Peter Nillis. Yes, I've got a question on one of the items.
On which item, Mr. Nellis?
The first item regarding the public hearing for the proposed Taco Bell.
Taco Bell.
Okay,
And it was stated in there that the public hearing was closed. Did we leave that public hearing open? Or was that the intent?
I thought we had kept it
Yeah, the intent was to leave it open.
open. Correct. So would it be your motion to change that to open?
Yes, something to that effect, that the public hearing was kept open.
Okay. Lori's making that change now. So is there any other discussion on the motion to approve the minutes besides what's already been recommended for change, which is to change the public hearing for the Taco Bell restaurant to remain open? Yeah. Any other discussion? There's no other discussion. All those in favor of the minutes as changed, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item is new business. We start with new business item A. Goransky Signs, applicant for North Shore Environmental, located at North 117 West 18493 Fulton Drive, a sign review application and action on this item. To give us more information and background on new business item A, I'll turn the meeting over to our associate planner, Emily Zant.
Thank you. Goransky Signs is proposing a wall sign for North Shore Environmental. North Shore Environmental is located in the M1 Limited Industrial District, surrounded by M1 Limited Industrial zoning. The proposed wall sign is approximately 72 square feet. It is internally illuminated and is to be mounted on the north elevation of the building. This wall sign does meet all of the requirements in the sign code, and therefore staff does recommend approval of the proposed wall sign for North Shore Environmental, subject to electrical permits prior to the installation of any or all electrical components.
Make a motion to approve as presented with the one condition.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item under new business is Lemberg Electric, Agent for Shore West Realtors Incorporated, property owner located at North 112 West 17847 Mequon Road, sign review application. For more information and background on this new business item B, I'll turn our meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff. Jeff.
All right, thank you. Our next item, Lemberg Electric, agent for Shore West Realtors, is requesting approval for a new monument sign for the 1 acre property located at N112 West 17847 Mequon Road. The property formerly owned by the Burchek Creative Group is a general office building property located just east of River Lane. Shore West Realty is proposing a double-sided internally illuminated cabinet, 5 feet by 10 feet, or a total 100 square feet, with plastic faces and opaque background. Let me skip ahead to that. And will be mounted on a River Rock faced base with 7-inch addressing, consistent with the sign requirements for the village. The existing monument sign, as you can see in this graphic, is surrounded by some landscaping that's sort of overgrown, but it's actually located off the property. The property line is quite far back onto the property, as you can see here by the dashed line. So the new sign will be placed 5 feet from the property line as required under the zoning regulations, with some new landscaping installed around the base consistent with the requirements. The staff recommendation is to approve the proposed monument sign with 2 conditions: electrical permits obtained from inspection services, and one to ensure that the nearest point of the base of the sign is a minimum 5 feet from the property line. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the sign as presented with the 2 conditions.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Trustee Bong.
Director Retzloff, is the landscaping going to grow to a point where it's going to block the address? How tall do hostas and junipers grow?
Well, the hostas and the junipers are intended to be low growing, more spreading than anything. The hostas can be the type of variety. I believe the Wolverine can get to be like 18 inches high. So they may need to be maintained in some manner to properly keep the addressing from being screened.
Okay. That's all I had.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item C, Tri-City National, agent for Viridian Homes and VHKE LLC, property owner, northeast corner of Preserve Parkway and Donges Bay Road, sign review application. Give us more information on this item. I'll turn the meeting back over to Associate Planner Emily Zant.
Thank you. Tri-City National Bank is requesting approval for additional temporary signage for the Kinderberg Estates subdivision. This will be the second real estate sign for the subdivision. This will be the second temporary real estate sign for the subdivision, advertising the financing agency for the project. The proposed signage will be located in the southwest corner of the site at the northeast corner of the intersection of Preserve Parkway and Donges Bay Road. This is an image of the existing temporary real estate sign that was approved administratively for the site. Chapter 17.46 of the Village Code limits real estate signage to 32 square feet for a property, but also allows for the Plan Commission to approve additional signage area. The proposed sign will be next to the existing temporary sign. Let's see, and will be subject to the conditions of other real estate signs, including an annual permit renewal and removal no later than 10 days after 90% of the lots have been sold. The proposed temporary sign may be no closer than 5 feet to the property line. So the proposed sign is a 4x4, 16 square feet per side, 32 square feet total, a double-sided wood sign. It will be 6 feet in height and 15 feet from the closest property line. Staff does recommend approval of the additional temporary real estate signage for Kinderberg Estates subdivision with the following conditions. That the proposed signage may not exceed 32 square feet, which would total 64 square feet of temporary signage on the site, and that the proposed sign must be set back at least 5 feet from the lot lines.
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary sign as presented with the 2 conditions.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Baum.
So, Assistant Planner Zant, what is the village's standard in this case? Because I have been through around some subdivisions where there are 6, 8, 10 signs up. Because each subcontractor wants to put a sign up and the developers let them. When do we stop? Or should we just say 1 sign, 32 square feet, everybody get their name on there?
Sure. So our code allows for staff to administratively approve up to 32 square feet. It does specify that the Plan Commission can allow more, which is what you're being requested today. The approval of this, staff is proposing a condition limiting the site to 64 square feet total. So if you approve this today, there would be no other signage permitted unless they come back and request it from the Plan Commission again.
And that's probably what happens at all these other ones. They just come back time and time again and everybody gets their sign put on there. Generally, what I'm accustomed to is we all go in on 1 sign and get all of our stuff on 1 sign. So I'm going to oppose this simply because if you just want your name out there, put it on the main sign.
Further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Director Retzloff.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to point out that we did receive 4 emails after the 4 p.m. Recommended time frame today from residents nearby, all in opposition to approving this additional signage. I see that all the Plan Commission members were copied in on the email, so I don't know if everyone had an opportunity to see those emails before they headed out for the meeting.
I was only able to get one. It was probably the first one that came in. Then I left my office, so I haven't seen any of the other ones. Since they came in after.
They all came in after 4.
Yeah.
Further discussion. No further discussion on this hot topic.
Said my piece.
I heard your piece. And like you said, you've seen other types of subdivisions that have multiple signs. The bank is wanting to propose themselves as a financier of this. I don't see harm in it. It's a big corner. I don't think it'll be too obtrusive as long as it doesn't block traffic. To me, if it's there, it doesn't matter. If it's not there, it doesn't matter. Either way, it doesn't matter to me. I can see why they want to advertise and get their name out there, but at the same time, I can see your point of putting it on 1 sign. So I'm neutral on it. It does, I don't see it as a huge issue. And if it'd be limited to 64 square feet, and this would be the last sign, I'd be fine with that too. Further discussion?
I would agree with Trustee Baum that they can start looking ratty. Each one looks a little different. After their temporary signs, they start leaning one way or the other. Yeah, I don't know. I get the point.
The only negative I've seen about this is they tend to be forgotten. And in some cases, they could be up for years. And in some cases, all the way down to when the last lot is sold. We did have other developers that used to have signs facing the freeway that were kind of off of the Division Road area in the old, what was it, the Lone Oaks and what is the other one next to it? Yeah, Meadow Creek Crossings. And we were always asking them to take it down, so it became more of an issue there because of their age, and they do, like you say, they're temporary, so they do tend to be weathered or more weathered and look shabby as time goes on. So, like I said, to me, either way, it's there or it's not. It doesn't make a difference to me. I can't understand why. I do understand why the bank would like to have their name there. You see that in other developments. We saw it on the development that was in front of the Syndics. They had multiple signs there.
Mr. Chairman, this is Director Retzloff.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what you said. In fact, it was a number of years back when we had to deal with the issue of those permanent real estate signs along the interstate that we changed the regulations to effectively require an annual renewal and payment of a new fee. I think, Larry, you can jump in and let me know what that fee is, but anybody who leaves up a temporary real estate sign like this is required to file a annual application and renewal, a payment of a new fee, and at that time we would take the opportunity to point out any problems we have with the sign in terms of its appearance or structure or something to that effect. So we do have some further regulation in place that can help us address some of those issues you bring up.
Further discussion?
So if we, if other people wanted to put up a sign in this subdivision, let's get back to specifically this one, they would need to come back to us?
Well, that's a good point, because we do have an allowance in the sign code that does not require a sign permit for a for sale sign to be posted on an individual lot. Or even if a individual construction contractor, a home builder, wanted to put up a sign on an individual lot, that is allowed under the code. And in addition to these sort of subdivision-wide advertising signs for the developer, and in this case for the bank.
Okay, so is there a difference then, and I think I'm answering my own question here, but is there a difference in this subdivision-wide sign like the bank putting up and the individual signs, which I understand at each property say that, you know, Joe's Construction built this house?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're really talking about tonight is this general sign, agreed?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, if we need to approve it, I think we're in control of the situation, are we not?
Yes.
Okay, so we would handle them as they come up, I guess. Could we not say, all right, we've approved 64 square feet already, 32 square feet on a side. So you need to negotiate with Tri-City Bank and see if you can share it with them. Is that a reasonable statement?
I would say yes. The code does provide for a maximum of 32 square feet. It's handled administratively, but there is the allowance, as Emily explained earlier, that one can go to the Plan Commission and ask for special permission to have more sign area for a temporary real estate sign. And that is what is happening here. Now,
Okay.
you could deny it and say, go back and you get 32 square feet, figure it out.
I'm not too concerned as long as we still have control over it, personally. And we apparently do.
Further discussion? Trustee Baum, you had your hand up? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No,
No,
Opposed wins. Motion fails. The request is denied. Next item under new business is new business item D, MS Consultants, agent for Aldi and Germantown BB LLC, property owner located at North 96 West 18838 County Line Road, site plan review for building renovations. More information and background on this, we'll turn the meeting over to our associate planner, Emily Zant.
Thank you. MS Consultants, an agent for Aldi Incorporated, is requesting site plan approval for exterior and facade improvements to the existing Aldi store located at N96 W18838 County Line Road. This property is zoned Germantown Plaza Planned Development District. The zoning to the north, east, and west are all commercial, and the south is Menominee Falls, south of County Line Road.
Emily, are you sharing your screen?
See her screen.
Can you? Okay.
So in 2019, the Germantown Plaza District PD was established to allow for a 3,685 square foot expansion and to reduce the side yard setback from 20 feet to 12 feet. At this time, the expansion has been put on hold, and exterior and interior improvements are proposed for the existing building at this time. This is the existing facade, the south and west elevations. The proposed elevation will include new LED lighting, the stucco finish being removed and replaced with aluminum composite panels, which matches more closely all these current store finishes. The painting of the EIFS columns to proper gray, and then the face replacement of the existing Aldi signage on the exit and entry facade to update the Aldi logo. This is the proposed west elevation. They are also doing interior improvements that if you want, we can go through, but those are included in the staff report. The Plan Commission does act as the architectural review board, and so it is the Plan Commission's responsibility to approve the proposed facade improvements. Staff does recommend approval of the site plan submitted, dated October 3rd, 2019, for the proposed interior and exterior remodeling of the Aldi store located on County Line Road, subject to 2 conditions. Approval is subject to all conditions and requirements set forth herein as adopted by the Plan Commission for the building plans dated October 3rd, 2019. And then just to note that commercial plan review and building permits should be obtained from the village prior to commencing any interior demolition, remodeling, or construction.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners?
I make a motion to approve the alterations as presented with the 2 conditions.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Who was the second? Was it?
I think it was a tie.
That's-
It was either Shadida or Kimler.
Any discussion?
is the exterior substantially different, or is it pretty much the same from what we approved in 19?
So what's changed on here is the center section around the Aldi's sign. That went from an EIFS material to an aluminum panel on both sides of the building. And then the corner tower elements, if you will, the pilasters, those are being repainted. I believe all the block is the same. block is not being changed. And then that's their new sign. They're,
Gives them the opportunity because of the renovation.
yeah, they're going around the country updating their image. And generally I would push for the new prototype, but this building cannot be retrofitted to the new prototype. So I'm accepting of this alternative.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item under new business is item E, Community Development Department, future land use discussion as part of the Germantown 2050 Comprehensive Plan for discussion. And have notes here that this will be led by Jeff and Danya Littlefield from Grave. I believe that Jeff is probably Jeff Retzloff.
Yes, thank you. Back on our meeting on December 14th, we distributed a updated neighborhood district and corridor map and table, along with a draft of the future land use plan text with some preliminary sections completed. And we had asked for some feedback concerning those components of the plan. Since then, we have received some feedback, minimal feedback, I'd say, but we did receive some feedback from the membership. A couple of specific comments I'll just highlight. One, the density column, the far right column on the NDC table is something that we need to take look at a little bit further. Right now, it presents a recommended density allowance for those neighborhoods and districts where residential development would be allowed. The question or the text in the chapter that was distributed talks about those numbers, those values being minimum density numbers. And I think in the context of how we've dealt with this in the past and in our current plan, we typically show maximum density allowed in a particular area. And I think we need to revise our table to address this a little bit differently than we currently are. So we'll go back and work on that a little bit further. The second comment had to do with the preferred land use columns in the middle of the NDC table. And in there, we talk about generalized land uses that would be either desirable, allowable, or undesirable on each of the neighborhoods, districts, or corridors, and more specifically with respect to commercial. Because there's such a dramatic range in different uses, commercial uses, we need to be a little bit more specific about what type of commercial would be allowed in the various neighborhoods, districts, and corridors. So whether we do that in the table itself to distinguish, for example, whether highway-oriented commercial would be allowed versus a neighborhood retail commercial, we may try and do that in the table, but certainly will in the detailed explanation for each of the neighborhood districts and corridors in the text of the chapter. But I would ask that if you have any additional comments that you want to make, please feel free to get those to either myself or Emily, so we can get to work on those. So we bring back to you an improved draft of the neighborhood district corridor map and table for our next meeting, Plan Commission, and ultimately for our next community workshop, which we're targeting for early in February. But tonight's topic, we want to shift gears a little bit, stay focused on the neighborhood district and corridor concept. Grafe has prepared 3 different alternative development or land use scenarios for 3 of our districts, specifically in the Holy Hill Road area. We've got the Gateway District, the Freistadt Business Park District, and the Isabel Farms neighborhood. All 3 of those are adjoining and presented on screen with the first alternative development scenario that has been put together by Grafe. So at this point, I'll let Danya take over and talk more about what's on the screen and what we are supposed to be doing as far as providing feedback for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So yeah, at our last meeting, when we looked at the NDC map with the commission, this area especially was identified as an area that commissioners would like to see more detail about. So we've worked with staff over the past several weeks now to and at Grafe here we've developed some scenarios. We really have two alternatives, and I'll zoom in a bit here. This would be the first one, and what you'll see is commercial land on the west here, transitioning to heavy industrial in this area, including the area that is already starting to be developed along Holy Hill Road, and then moving to light industrial here north of Holy Hill Road and east of Goldendale. And then we show some of the areas of proposed medium density residential. And we talked about conservation subdivisions last time as well. The second scenario that we have, I'll just show one additional drawing because what it is the second scenario that shows instead of this entire area here being light industrial, it shows a residential area in the northern parts of this section of the focus area here. And so this is basically a more detailed version of alternate 2 that gives a little bit more information about the density and layouts that might be possible within those conservation subdivisions. And I'm happy to go in more detail about the conservation subdivisions as drawn here, and some of the density that we have and design that we have been discussing. But I would also love to open it up for your discussion to kind of guide where we go here with these two alternatives. And as Jeff mentioned, our goal is to show these to you, any feedback before we hopefully bring a scenario or maybe even 2 scenarios to the public as part of the comprehensive plan community engagement process.
I'll jump in and kick the discussion off a bit here. As shown on the screen, this second scenario presents a residential area as essentially a buffer between the industrial area and the rural density development areas to the north. And I think that's certainly one way that we could provide some degree of buffering, is sort of a step down in intensity of land use from the light industrial to a single family residential, and then to a larger lot rural residential type of land use. I know there was concern on the part of the Plan Commission members about the sort of the starkness of the industrial district abutting rural residential district on the NDC map. Danya, is that something you have handy you can bring up, just the general NDC map?
Yes, just one moment. It's a big file, so it's going to take a second to load up. In the meantime, I'll just to kind of piggyback on, oh, there we go. Apologies, it wasn't already loaded. Big graphics file. Yes, so we're looking at these areas here. You can see my sort of hand outlining that shape. And we had been discussing the transition between the Gateway Corporate Park District and especially this neighborhood here. but then also the Rural Preservation District here, just as Jeff was saying. And I wanted to go back to, let's see, this image, because the alternate 2 covers up some of this with a text box explaining the residential areas. But one of the things that we have been discussing is the environmental corridors that Germantown does have, and then sort of expanding on those with additional kind of larger landscape buffers that would connect into that network and allow for more open space that really builds on the assets that Germantown already has in terms of environmental corridors. So would you like me to pull the map back up though? I apologize for.
No, like, I don't like the first example.
Danny, could you bring up the first alternative?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we welcome any comments. I can hear a little bit of discussion, but not super well from over here.
Can we go into more detail about what the difference is between light industrial and heavy industrial as far as what type of businesses we could expect for either of those?
Well, at this point, at least my thought is that the light industrial would be those types of land uses that don't involve any sort of necessarily heavy duty production, anything that might emit any sort of extreme light or odor or smoke or pounding or vibration or things of that nature. Whereas the light industrial would be more akin to what actually is out there right now, light manufacturing, warehousing, those sorts of uses.
Okay. So even though some of this area that actually is like where Briggs is over there and everything, that is kind of light industrial, but on here it's showing it as a heavier industrial.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a what we would allow. I mean, quite frankly, buildings do change hands over time, and there could be other uses that would might want to locate in an existing building that previously had a light industrial use. The question is, would we permit a heavier duty manufacturing use to locate in that sort of a shell of a building? And that's how we would approach it in this way, either graphically or in the NDC table itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add to that the heavy industrial thing to me is power plants and steel mills and stamping and forging, and that those words are kind of loaded. I don't see that as a heavy industrial area. I see it more as light manufacturing and warehousing.
Well, we could certainly, pull back and designate it a little bit more broadly, and then take advantage of a case-by-case assessment of what's proposed. For example, what would you consider the Gale Foods operation down on Main Street to be, Tony? A light industrial or more of a heavy industrial?
I don't know what goes on inside the building, but from the exterior, to me, that's heavy industrial, just with the number of towers and cooling plants and all the other things they have there. That one kind of slips from light to heavy.
Okay. Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that sort of relative scale, that Gale Foods is more in the heavier industrial side than the light warehousing side of that spectrum or continuum.
Much like we did in the business park south of Mequon Road over on the east side of the village, the northern part of that tried to implement more smaller office warehouse type buildings, where the southern end of it really got into the more, what I would consider a moderately heavy industry. So I think we want to look at that aspect, that the west end would be like the south end, and the east end would be like the north end.
Right, I know what you mean.
And then the other comment I have about this plan is how we engage the medium density residential. I would actually like to see that yellow section follow Fond du Lac Avenue until it gets to the border of the town of Germantown. And then we suggest to the town of Germantown that all their stuff south of 145 goes into that same category. Because then what that does is it takes this yellow color and surrounds the industrial, and then we put a green vegetative buffer between that and the residential. Follow what I'm saying there, or do you need me to draw it?
Yeah, it'd be nice if you could draw it in some way.
Can you relinquish control to me?
I think so.
We'll see if we can do this.
Let me see. Emily, do you have any tips? I'm more familiar with Zoom. Right there.
Share.
You can ask for control.
With this one?
Request annotate, yep.
Request control.
Oh, great.
Okay. So let me see if I'm drawing on here yet. Does it come over to me?
I see a little pencil out there.
Okay, I think this is going.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if we were to take this yellow color and bring it to follow 145 and have all this be the yellow, and then we suggest that the town of Germantown follow suit with that up here. Now I've got the industrial surrounding with a transition piece. Now I go from west to east. I got the west orange commercial. I got the moderately heavy industry. Then I got the office warehouses. Then we want to transition and put a buffer zone in here like we have here. Then I get a residential component, which is medium density. Then it transitions into the rural conservation area farther east. So it's a transition down to farmland.
I think that makes sense to me too, that you actually create a good transition from one land type use to the next as you head further east and north.
And Matt, really curious as your perspective, because you're down here in the Isabel Farms. Over in my neck of the woods, I am promoting to my neighbors that this residential conservation district is kind of a happy median between the country living of your subdivision and the industrial that's going to be north of you. Would you agree with that?
Somewhat. I mean, boy, those lots are very small. If I look at the plan, it looks like a lot of times you're having 5, 6, maybe 5 lots against one lot, in the Isabel Farm subdivision. So you're really, there we go. We can see. I mean, a lot of times some of those 5-acre lots are touching up against probably your 5 or 6 or 7 lots in that conservation subdivision. So, I don't know how people are going to feel. I haven't been out talking to my neighbors about this, but it's definitely better than being right next to industrial. However, I mean, I wonder if there's a way to, make it less dense as you move from south to north. Would it be better to have larger lots on the south part of that subdivision and then as you move north, you know, to make it worth it while for a developer, maybe it would be more dense, you know, near Holy Hill Road.
So we get larger lots down on the south side and smaller lots. Whoops, hold on. I lost my pen. Smaller lots up on the north side here.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Did that come through?
Yeah,
You gotta go down a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's true.
that definitely this can be,
Altered.
you know, yeah, I mean, and it can show more very obviously. This is just showing a uniform lot shape and also size throughout all of these. And I think that, yeah, the specificity that you're talking about would certainly be
You know,
helpful to see.
one thing to keep in mind, the area that we're marking up here north of Isabel Farms is an area that would lie within the sewer service area. So the less dense we get, the more inefficient we get in terms of taking advantage of the utilities that have been extended past this particular area. I have a question for David. What sort of how do you define medium density residential?
Well, I like this conservation subdivision. If that's what the yellow would indicate on alternate one, I'm okay with that. It's more dense than what Isabel Farms is, but it's transitional. I'm not looking to put another Windsong in there or Heritage Hills in there. This is rural area. This is country area. The conservation subdivision really would seem to work if I encircle the industrial with it and put a buffer to it. Landscape buffer.
David,
Yeah.
what are with your drawing there, you go north of that existing, we're still where your sketching is, okay?
Yeah.
You go to the east of the industrial park area, then you go around into the Germantown town of.
Right.
You propose then with that conservation subdivision that's on the north edge of the industrial area. You propose to move that north, or is it going to become larger?
No, I would bring the pink stuff all the way up into here. So
Okay.
this all becomes the light industrial, and then
The pink stuff is all light industrial now, right? Where you
Yes.
marked? Okay,
Yes.
I thought that's what you meant, but I
Yeah.
didn't know what happened to that piece of conservation subdivision that was left there after yeah, there you go.
and then I want to get a buffer that continues this buffer around, so there's something to separate residential from industrial.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't want Gale's Food in the pink zone. But maybe Gale's Food would work well on the west end if we wanted something of that magnitude.
Well, more like Gale Food along Freistadt.
I think Gale Food along Freistadt, the one at the corner of Maple and Freistadt, I think that could go anywhere because that's just a warehouse.
Well, that's what I mean. It would be light, so it would be permissible in this area.
No, I would put that in the western zone. In the pink zone here, I'm thinking of a smaller footprint office warehouse building with a little more architectural character to it, not the big box. But if you go in the park off of Mequon Road and Wasaki Road there, you've got some smaller buildings. They're not 100,000 square feet. They're 10,000 square feet, and they got a prairie style look to them. They just have a smaller scale to it.
Then are you differentiating the type of industrial we see there to the west of Goldendale to what you're proposing for the right of Goldendale?
Well, I'd be willing to take, I don't have orange in my palette here, so I'd be willing to take this stuff and bring it all the way to Goldendale and into these areas down here.
Right, I'm seeing what you mean.
And then, so there, Goldendale's the cutoff, because I've already got three large boxes in here. So
Right.
it's already there. If I continue that along Goldendale, I'm fine with that. But then going to the east side of Goldendale, I want to step down the scale of the building. I want to increase the character of the architecture. It's not big boxes with slight articulation. It's smaller boxes with greater articulation that starts to transition into the residential scale.
Okay, that's what I was just what I was gonna bring up then. What you're proposing is a move toward the residential.
Yes.
Okay, I like that.
May I make a comment about the residential conservation subdivision just south of Holy Hill Road here? And we talked about kind of larger lots as it on the south. One of the things that I don't believe is showing up very well in this drawing is that, you know, and Craig, my colleague, who I'm sure you remember, we talked about this just before the meeting, is that, you know, whoops, trying to draw, is that this buffer area, it looks a little bit thin right here, but I'm, you know, wondering if, you know, increasing the buffer so that, you know, the separation between the Isabel Farms subdivision and the, you know, a conservation type subdivision would be, you know, you wouldn't be looking at the backs of many houses from that subdivision, but there would be more of a kind of enhanced environmental corridor happening there. If the, you know, if the density as shown would be possibly more acceptable. And, you know, I wanted to point out the density that we were drawing this at, or we envisioned kind of 15,000 to 20,000 square foot lot size, as that's what you're seeing here. This is drawn at 20,000 square foot lot size. And there is sort of space in between those lots that's kind of contributing to the conservation subdivision character. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I don't think the kind of intended buffer you know, environmental corridor is showing up at the southern end, and I do think that this lot size is kind of one of the keys to the conservation subdivision concept, and the density proposed is part of that. It's part of creating that open space network.
I would say for a concept, the concept that you originally have would be okay to run forward with. When we get into a specific developer and starting to work on the specifics of this location, it would be a combination of additional vegetative buffer and maybe a few larger lots or less lots. So I think I'd leave what you have here, but for us on the Plan Commission, remember that there's some tweaks that have to happen to that area. I'm not sure it's perfect yet, and I'm not sure the Isabel Farms residents are going to be 100% accepting of it. So we'll have to work with the developer and the residents to get a meeting of the minds.
And I mean, can we just get rid of the idea of 15,000 square foot lots altogether? That is super small in my opinion. I mean, when I lived in Milwaukee, I lived on a 12,000 square foot lot, and I mean, that was very, very small.
Yeah, but you do need to keep in mind that this is as part of a conservation subdivision approach where in this graphic, over 75% of the area is preserved as open space. So if it's, you know, I assume the concern is more visual than anything else because the land use is the same, residential. So creating a firmer and maybe more opaque buffer between Isabel Farms and whatever residential happens to the north is sort of a minimum requirement right from the get-go. But then the layout and the actual lot size, if it's within a conservation subdivision approach, there's a lot of flexibility that we could do there.
Yeah, I think we're getting too far into the weeds because, none of this will matter until a developer comes and shows us a plan. I had a question though too, like this area kind of would maybe be similar to what's across from Germantown High School. There's some manufacturing over there, and then you have the condos. What's that neighborhood called?
Blackstone Creek?
Yeah, Blackstone. I mean, is there any complaints or any problems when you have like that type of development right next to the manufacturing, the light industry? Is that like a sought after type of place to make a development like this?
There's,
I,
go ahead, Jeff.
I would say yes. We have, in that particular case, we have, because the use to the north is what I would call a heavy industry. It has some exterior equipment that has over time created some noise issues for the residential neighborhood to the south, even though we required a 100-foot wide landscape buffer on the north side of the Blackstone Creek neighborhood. So there it's sort of a land use compatibility issue more so than it is just a buffering requirement. That's why I think it's important, as we discussed fairly early on, is to distinguish within the class, what type of industrial use would be acceptable in certain areas, and sort of establish those parameters up front as part of an overall district description in our plan. I know I respect the comment about we're getting too far into the weeds on some of the design components, but honestly, if we have some of those parameters laid out up front, that'd be a starting point for our discussion with a developer, as opposed to them coming in with some predetermined idea that they've already costed out as far as their development and planning goes, and then having to backtrack when we say no, that isn't going to work. But
yeah, but I think we've given you the framework based on this little adaptation sketch. Look, along the Isabel Farms, this is even too dense for us. We'd like it a little more open. So we're not going to get that many lots in here. We're maybe get half the lots, but on the northern end of it, we're liking that. So
understood.
Is that enough to give you guidance to talk to the developer? Hey, here's what these guys are talking about, and here's what I believe they'll accept.
Yeah,
And
I think that's enough.
as to the sound at Blackstone, I have a business associate that lives in one of the end units on the north end, right against the industrial. The industrial is not what I get complaints about. It's the neighbor's water going onto his land. They bought the house knowing that there's industrial back there. They accepted it when they bought it. They saw it. You're seeing that there's going to be light industrial to the north of you here. Heavier stuff is already in place. There's nothing we're not going to get rid of that now. You're buying your property with understandings now. The people in, what's the subdivision, the Belinsky subdivision right on Wasaki Road in Mequon over there.
Prairie Glen.
What?
Prairie Glen.
Prairie Glen. They have bought up against light industrial, the smaller buildings. Never had a complaint from them about noise.
Yeah.
So you're starting to get compatible business, and there's a buffer, compatible smaller businesses, a landscape buffer, then the residential.
And I like your idea that, perhaps the architecture would need to be a little bit different. I mean, personally, those, Briggs and Stratton and the other larger buildings that are over there, I mean, they're pretty ugly buildings in my opinion. I mean, they don't belong next to residential. They have the lights coming off the side of the building, very bright at night. I just couldn't see, wanting to build a house next to something of that scale, really. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just a gigantic building, and it's white.
Yeah. If you go to the business park that I keep referring to, drive down the eastern street in there, and they start to be built into a tree line, and they're all smaller scale buildings, and they do not have the immense amount of overhead doors. They don't have the big light fixtures. They're not 40 feet tall. They're scaled down to start the transition into the residential area.
Right, and
Go ahead.
that is a product of the village buying the land, developing the Germantown Business Park, deciding the lot size and the various covenants and restrictions as part of the development prior to any of those businesses going in. So it does take, sort of establishing some parameters in terms of just those things, types of uses, lot sizes, and buffering requirements. So if we can get those things laid out, at least initially, as part of the neighborhood district corridor concept in the plan, that would be a really good start. Short of the village, buying the land and developing it and creating those parameters and then selling the lots to individual developers. So that would be my goal as part of the trying to manipulate, or not manipulate, but leverage the neighborhood district corridor planning concept to predetermine what some of those features need to be to ensure compatibility across the area and between neighborhoods.
Yeah, and we can take a really heavy hand in doing this. Madison, for example, they have this concept sketch so refined that a developer coming in would want to do another Briggs and Stratton 750,000 square foot building in the pink zone, and we wouldn't even talk to them. That's not what we want. We have established guidelines. We know what we want to do. We're not letting a developer come in and start plunking in more 700,000 square foot buildings. It doesn't work with the area. It doesn't work with our residents. We just hold firm to a plan that we put into place. Other communities do it all the time.
So, David, given that comment, do you foresee the village creating, as part of our current planning effort, areas for those large buildings?
I think by default we already have the orange zone that I've scribbled out. Well, the orange zone is on the interstate, but then there's the darker beige, which goes up to what's the road?
North of Rockfield?
Goldendale. That orange scribble that I did, that's where your large format buildings are, and they're limited to there. They're not going any farther east than Goldendale Road. And then from Goldendale Road east, that pink section, there's smaller scale, better architecture in that zone.
Okay,
And yet what?
given those two distinctions, what then do you foresee or would like to see south of the railroad, north of Freistadt, and west of Goldendale?
Can you pan the drawing down to show a little bit more of that? Oh, sure. Now all my markings are
Now
gone.
your scribbles don't follow.
Okay. Okay, so give me that area again. South of Holy Hill, north of the railroad track?
South of the railroad, east of 41, north of Freistadt, and west of Goldendale. The neighborhood or the district that we call the Freistadt Business Park District.
Yeah, that's the one that's got the circular area in the center there.
Yes.
I would be fine with this in the same sense of what I drew up above, in that the beige area can still be some larger buildings, but I need to transition down along Freistadt and Goldendale like you've got there with the pink. Yeah, so that area that you just showed starts to have those smaller scale buildings better architecture, and more, much like what you see at Speaker Corporation. Better quality architecture, multiple smaller buildings, but I would not put a 700,000 square foot warehouse building in there. I might do it in the beige area, but not in that pink zone.
Okay.
Because then in this area, I need some landscape buffer along Goldendale because I've got a residential district right across the street. And I need some buffer along there, yeah. Yep, right there. Going blind.
Are there any more comments with regard to the two alternatives and the industrial development more specifically?
Ask that again.
I would just like to see more detail in maybe a future plan of like how you can limit what is put into, you know, the light industrial area somewhat, you know, how is it limited architecturally, maybe building size wise, and, you know, definitely not an expert in that. So, you know, I don't know how that would look, but.
No, ultimately what, you know, one tool we could use is creating a special zoning district for this particular area, whether it's narrowly focused for just a particular neighborhood, or that could be applied to multiple neighborhoods like the Freistadt Road Business Park, like the Gateway Corporate Park District, and so on, where we would spell out lot sizes, some architectural requirements. We could get into some of those things, like I'm sure David has examples of other zoning districts in the Madison area where they're very specific as far as what type of development can occur. That might almost read like restrictive covenants, but is actually a zoning district.
Are those actually beneficial, or does some of that become so restrictive that, you know, the developer is saying, well, we can't do anything with the way this is set up here, you know?
I will tell you my history. Whenever I have a developer that wants to build something in Madison, I tell them to go run. Go somewhere else, go over the border. It's going to take you 6 months to a year to get through their process. But that's what is allowing Madison to be that restrictive. It tends to come off as aggressive and unfriendly to business. But when we are trying to establish a certain transition in this area from east to west or west to east, we need to do something to put these restrictions on there.
Mm-hmm.
The business park, it sold out. We got the smaller businesses on the east end side and the north end side. We held our ground. There were people who wanted to do bigger things, but we held our ground there, and that business park sold out. So it may take a little bit longer for this to come around, but in the end, what you will gain will be far better than just allowing anything to go in here.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Could I sort of move the conversation a little bit to the west area along 41? On both alternatives, we're showing the area in an orange color and designating that generally as commercial. And I'd just like to hear what people's thoughts are with regard to what sort of commercial do you envision or would want to see locate in this part of the village if that's what we ended up including in our plan. Would it be a highway-oriented commercial only? Would it include some neighborhood commercial activity? Big box commercial? I mean, I've heard opinions about that. Any comments you have at that point, at this point, would be appreciated.
I would look at a mixed use of professional type commercial, supportive clinics. Something, I'm not looking for restaurants. I'm not looking to line it up with gas stations and restaurants. No big box, because big box comes back to get you for its taxes, for the dark store side of it. I don't, it also starts to take away from the county line commercial that we've already see a lot of empty buildings of a larger scale there. So I think it's got to be a smaller end commercial that kind of fills in along that area. And it could be commercial real estate.
I would be very not leery, but cautious looking at this. What comes to mind for me is driving up 41 up through Oshkosh. And along Oshkosh, it's restaurant after restaurant after restaurant with a big box behind it. And you got pylon signs everywhere, and it just looks trashy. I don't want that vision for Germantown. The medical office building, that would be great if I could get, the just south of here, there's the West Bend Insurance Company. Germantown?
Germantown Insurance.
Mutual,
Germantown Mutual. Sorry if I offended anybody.
a long-standing company.
Yeah.
Kind of pretty much built Germantown.
That company that's named after our city, village. If you could get some more stuff like that along here, I think that would be spectacular. Along 894, they just developed, what's it called, 84 Spur.
Right.
That has a mix of some commercial, although they're medium-sized boxes. Even the Kohl's department store in there is a half-size store. But then they got a medical office building, and then they put some residential in there, multifamily. Yeah. So,
Right. Well, just like Whitestone Station.
Yeah.
It's similar to it in appearance.
Yeah. Could you put Whitestone Station along there? If there's a market for it, I could see it. That doesn't look trashy. It looks presentable from the interstate. But I do not want to get a repeat of what Oshkosh has.
And you don't want the look of Kenosha either.
Which part of Kenosha?
As you head down towards the border, you have big box after big box of light industrial warehousing.
Oh, yeah,
along
no.
the freeway on either side.
I don't want that either.
So the mixed use Spur 84 and Whitestone Station sort of mixed use commercial with financial, health, office type uses, that would be more acceptable.
Yeah.
One of the knocks that we've heard is that for industrial users, sometimes they're looking for, the type of support, land uses and services that would benefit their employees, whether they be lunch spots or a daycare or just convenience market kind of stuff, on the way home from work. Would you be willing to accommodate some level of neighborhood commercial within these areas? For example, even within an area that's shown on this graphic as light industrial?
You've got a Quick Trip that's very close to that across the highway that could draw some of that in. And not that I'm trying to send business across the border, but they kind of fill that need. I don't know what kind of competitive you'd put on the other side that would match it or be able to sustain based on the draw that they have alone. You could look at any type of a hotel. Wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
I could see a hotel easily wanting to be there, but what about fast food? They're going to want to be there too on the highway exit.
You got to be careful because you start to scrounge it off of the other businesses that are county
Down the
line.
interstate at county line. But, you know, while County Line has a bunch of restaurants, it doesn't have all of them. So where's the next Chick-fil-A gonna go? You know, it's a alternative. It's not another burger joint. It's something different. Are there other fast food noodles and company, something else that would want to?
Look at
I think it would be
Brookfield's
better
back.
to have like a neighborhood type restaurant in there, like you see at Whitestone
Yeah.
Station or whatever. You got a beer place down there. I forgot what that's called. Mr.
Fitness
Brews.
centers, hotels.
Yeah, something like that. Not your
Office.
typical fast food.
But we're talking about Brookfield by Brookfield Square Mall along 94, and what has been developing along there. You've got the fitness centers, you got the hotels, you got office buildings going in there. I think that's a different type of a market. And because paralleling the interstate a greater distance away is Blue Mound Road, which has all your convenience stuff, your restaurants, your shops, your banks, all that stuff's on there cluttering up that road.
I think in some cases, and a good lesson that we've learned with TIF 4 or the business park was that you're not going to put an office space or mainly an office space that's too far away from the freeway. Most of the successful office spaces are near an interchange, like 164 or 74 or any of those that have those groups of offices where you see the lawyers firm, you see the colleges, you see any of the other industrial offices that have set up their headquarters there. It's always near an interstate. So you'd want to see some of that there in that area too, because you're not going to have it be successful when it gets too far away from the interstate, like it wasn't for TIF 4. It was slotted as all mostly office space, and you couldn't sell it as such because it was too far away from the interstate.
Yeah. Jeff, what's the likelihood of another on-ramp at Freistadt Road? Are those just too close together?
Well, what I've heard is that the spacing doesn't meet the DOT spacing, minimum spacing requirements, but
Yeah.
that's not to say that, a development or developer with clout and the dollars might influence, that decision making. It sort of depends on what might locate in the area. It would certainly satisfy or relieve some of the pressure we have that's being generated by our existing and planned industrial on our pinch points like Goldendale and Freistadt and other locations as you head south. So,
Yeah, I'm rusty on what their spacing is. I haven't done much highway work, interstate work lately, so but I knew they had some type of limitations, and
But it becomes a release valve off of Holy Hill, and for what the infrastructure they're looking at to improve that on-off area, they wouldn't have to put as much in if they had a release a little bit further south.
Excuse me, this is Steve Krecklow. I can jump in with a little bit of additional information on the Freistadt interchange question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We did raise that question with DOT about a year ago during conversations we've been having, looking at traffic studies on the Holy Hill interchange. It is considered an urban stretch of interstate, so it would be possible to put an interchange in on Freistadt Road. The spacing requirements would work out. However, DOT said that at first glance, they had a lot of questions and concerns about the footprint and whether they would be able to meet current federal requirements for merge lanes, et cetera, within that footprint. And in particular, they said that they felt they would probably have to acquire space on the west side where the Maple Terrace residential development is. And since that is generally affordable housing, it could then, a domino effect of that would be that Germantown would then have to create some alternative affordable housing in other parts of the community. So in other words, it may be possible, but it would probably be very expensive and a very long-term, long timeline process to get that approved.
But for a 2050 land use plan, it might work out in 50 years, 30 years.
We might have flying cars in 50 years too.
That's right.
Steve, I have a question. Knowing how putting things on a map has some degree of momentum to it, is it something that we could go ahead and put on as a future interchange and let future plan commission and boards debate that as time goes on and development occurs? You know, if it's on someone's plan, someone should have to address it at some point to do some analysis. And if we keep that balloon up in the air, maybe one day things will change a little bit and we may be able to get something like that 20 years down the road.
The one question, and maybe this is a consideration as you're having this conversation this evening, the DOT is looking, and based on that study that Germantown and Richfield are working on jointly right now, at a potential expansion of the Holy Hill interchange. And I think what DOT was looking at as a more feasible option would be a frontage road from Freistadt to Holy Hill, and then a larger interchange, possibly something along the lines of the Mequon Road interchange that could accommodate significantly more traffic up at Holy Hill. And I think if that's the way that that's is a very possible in the near future scenario. And my one doing something else on a map down at Freistadt would be that it might reduce the possibility for an expansion up at Holy Hill to accommodate additional traffic up there.
You say the frontage road?
Yeah, that a long-term plan for some sort of a road that would connect Freistadt to Holy Hill up along the storage facilities. There is a railroad crossing up there. I see it on the map.
Right, so is that a 2-lane road or a 4-lane proposed?
That level of detail we haven't, DOT did not get into. They just did look at some sort of connection between the two that would then basically take traffic that was coming from that area, would have the option of either going south to the Mequon Road interchange or north up to the Holy Hill interchange.
I'll just jump in quickly to say that this line right here, you can see it says proposed frontage road. Knowing a little bit about that possibility, we did include kind of a suggestion of that type of connection in this drawing.
Or you could put that, we're thinking about calling that Retzloff Way.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, I heard that.
We're trying to get the momentum going, Jeff.
Yep, I know. If that's what it takes, I'll fall on the sword and you can name it whatever you want. But I definitely think the frontage road it needs to be something that we put in the plan. There's no question about it. Absolutely.
I agree. It's its own release, and it does serve that purpose. And then it also allows some differences and options in a commercial usage. Overall, I like the idea of surrounding the residential around, like Trustee Baum was showing. I'm not looking for it to be as heavy industrial as we're showing on some of that's north of Holy Hill Road. I like that buffer around as it feathers. We've always talked about feathering it into the more rural areas, and I think that residential helps to accomplish that with the right buffers near it, whether it be landscaping or berming or whatever it takes, or just natural areas.
Before we move on from the commercial area along 41, did I get a sense that there is some willingness to accept possibly a mixed-use development that would include some higher density residential, like the Spur 84 and Whitestone Station concept?
Yeah, I would. I know multifamily is not looked upon well in this community, but in this location along the interstate, if I could get something like Whitestone Crossing or Spur 84, I think it would be go gangbusters there.
I don't know if it needs to use that as an example, because you can even just go down on Mequon Road into like the Thiensville area and some of the mixed use development they've put there right
The new
before
stuff.
57
Oh.
and up towards 76th Street. They're redeveloping that whole area and have taken some of their small strip mall commercials and converted it into some of its multifamily, some of its mixed use. I mean, there's markets in there, there's restaurants in there, there's
Fitness centers.
fitness centers in there, and
Brew
then on the
pub.
other side of the street, you have, of course, retirement community, and then to support that, they have some healthcare centers kind of peppered in there. So I think they've done a great job in that. They've got a microbrewery
Yeah.
in there as well.
Mhm.
So it's a popular area on the weekends, but at the same time, it has to have, as part of that support, that multifamily component. If you're going to put just multifamily for the sense of multifamily there, I think
Yeah.
you're going to have a bigger battle on your hands than you would if you'd propose it as part of a mixed use development to help support that development, but at the same time serve purpose to bring people that want to live in that type of a situation for the businesses that are nearby. But it can't be just standalone multifamily. It needs to be that multi-use development.
You've got three good examples of that in Mequon, Thiensville, Spur 84, and Whitestone Crossing. They all are doing a full mixed use.
But each of them are bordered by multifamily.
Yeah.
In some cases, 3-4 story.
To transition between the other districts.
Right.
Mhm. And they fit the area. They fit where they're at. So yeah, just
But
to
they're
throw
not
apartment
stark-
buildings down there.
They're not stark standouts because they have everything else that's around it.
Yeah, they work with the rest of the community.
So I'm going to ask the question before we tie things up here, because we do need to segue a little bit into our next focus area, if you will, and that would be our Main Street area. Do you envision a similar approach to making our Mequon Road, Main Street commercial core area more successful by allowing and encouraging higher density residential? Given the fact we've got some of those other supporting uses already in place, the commercial, the fitness, the.
In that instance, you're not dealing with as much of a blank piece of paper. So
Right.
you need to have some other components there that help support the reason for it to come into that area, whether it's the support of the commercial that's already there, the food centers that are more to the south, or what other amenities can be developed that help not only the component of that multifamily, but the residents as a whole. What else are you bringing there that helps to offset that as part of that development? It's not just building multifamily for the sense of multifamily. It's building it because it has this part of a component of it that helps Germantown as a whole.
And
Right.
Jan, I'm going to throw out for you. Yes, we have a lot of restaurants in Germantown, but the family sit down, slow, casual restaurant, we don't have enough of. We got a bunch of fast food stuff and a bunch of bars, but we don't have the Luminati's and the Portillos. We don't have those. If those could be developed in the Main Street area, that's we're gonna see something, but that's a whole different style of restaurant.
I would just mention that on the grief team, we've talked a bit about as part of a village center kind of multifamily development, it's sort of a kind of a public square and kind of highly designed open space could be a type of amenity that we've heard and we feel based on looking at other similar examples recently would be successful in the village center area, something that has some open space for possible events and it's kind of a highly designed and desirable place to be.
I would agree with that. That's what your main street is all about. We have to get our residents over the stigma of multifamily. So we've fought some hard battles with multifamily.
But it didn't always carry another development component of it. It was filling space that was blank.
Yeah.
Sac City Village was an area that at one time when it was proposed as a PPD, it had some amenities to the downtown, but for the way that it ended up, it just became a multifamily development.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
And that's where you're going to get your battles when it's just standalone. You need to show the amenities, you need to show what it supports, and you need to know what else it brings as other residents' use, that it's not all targeted for that community. It has uses for the rest of the residents as well. We're not building it because we want to support just the people that come for that multifamily component. It has to benefit the village as a whole.
and I think that's what Mequon Thiensville, I think that redevelopment area, I think theirs is called Spur 16. I think that redevelopment is really what our Main Street wants to be. Smaller businesses, nicer housing, not low-cost multifamily.
But you also see a very strong component of a walking community
Yeah.
there based on what is around it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of car traffic. You see a lot of people on, not now,
Bicycles.
of course, but in warmer weather, walking.
And that's what in this plan, that's what I think we also need to see going down Holy Hill Road. Is there going to be a bike path, a pedestrian path to connect to some of these other medium density residential areas, get you over to that commercial area if you want to ride your bike and get a coffee, go to the gym, whatever's going to be over there,
Yeah, you can see this light green dotted line just to the north of Holy Hill Road, sort of envisioned as a way, to incorporate the existing environmental corridor that you have here along the railroad corridor to Holy Hill Road and connect back to the park here. And then, it could also continue up through the environmental corridor and just provide some sort of regional connectivity here, but also kind of make it a place, which is an emphasis of the plan, certainly, and we know one of your goals as well.
So is that running along the railroad track? Is that a proposed path to them?
Yeah, dash line.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it changes colors here just so you can see it.
Okay.
Danya, is that reflective of a recommendation coming out of the outdoor recreation plan?
That is a great question. I believe I don't have that answer at my fingertips. There is a big push right now in the community, which I'm sure you all are all aware of, through the comprehensive outdoor recreation planning process to expand the trail network in Germantown. We've heard over and over again that Germantown residents want more trail connectivity. But I would have to check, Jeff, and just see how this overlaps with that trail network.
Okay,
planned trail network. Mhm.
around.
And this is a great area for it. You do have Deansville Park,
Exactly.
perhaps a commercial district with restaurants and stuff, and then also Homestead Hollow Park, all within, half mile, quarter mile. I don't know.
What?
So,
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Boy, the more
Yeah.
walking you can do in those areas, just it draws everything together.
mhm.
Same thing here. It's wet in here. That guy wanted to put that.
Would the Plan Commission members be interested in having a brief presentation of the proposed outdoor recreation plan at our next meeting?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that might help tie some things together and generate some helpful discussion about land use as well. I'll reach out to Mark and Danya will talk further with Craig. Before we, I don't know where we're at, Danya, as far as any more commentary you have on the alternatives that you've proposed.
Well, I guess what I would say is that we have this target date to bring some concepts to the community along with the overall NDC map in early February, as Jeff mentioned. So what we want to do is make sure we have something to get a community reaction before you all sort of receive that community feedback and we move to more of a finalized plan for both the map and kind of some of these area details. So this would be our second of 3 community meetings coming up in February.
Right.
So we have more, but you know, once we get to kind of the final meeting, we do want to make sure that we have everything we need. So what we were hoping is to show a concept for this area in February. So I want to make sure, or I hope, or I would be hoping that we could get there by then, if we can. So I guess that would be my question. Do we want to see a, possibly a revised plan before then? Can we take these notes and revise? So that's a question both for you, Jeff, and also for the commissioners.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I would like to have another meeting with the Plan Commission on the 4th Monday of this month on January 25th. I think we'll all be in good shape after the Packers win the day before on the 24th. So we'll be in a jolly mood. But if we meet again on the 25th, we could have a short amount of time set aside to talk about the outdoor recreation plan, and maybe we can have some progress toward a revision of the alternative here, consistent with what David had laid out for us in the discussion that followed. So I think that's a good approach, and we can move on to that.
Okay, that sounds great. And Jeff, you and Emily and Craig and I will speak about our plans for that then. I will just say I have just assure you that I've taken photographs of the drawings. I know I deleted them, but I have those on hand to reference. So thank you very much for that. Those annotations.
Okay. I guess at this point, all I have is to announce that I would like us to meet again on the 25th.
Okay.
If anybody knows in advance they can't make it, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll gather in a similar setting and keep plowing ahead with our land use scenarios for the Gateway area, and also we'll be presenting some further revisions to the NDC table and some further explanations for the various categories and columns in there.
Okay. Any other announcements? No other announcements? Then we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for joining us via WebEx. Have a good night. We are adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.